the morality of loyalty. How do we understand loyalty in terms of moral behaviour? So we're building this understanding, this approach, according to Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the excellent book The Righteous Mind and developed the ideas together with his multidisciplinary team of moral foundations theory. So it starts with this idea: what differentiates us from monkeys? And apparently, according to Haidt, what differentiates us from monkeys is nothing to do with hairstyles or opposing thumbs. The way in which we're different from chimpanzees is that we are able to collaborate. You will never see two chimpanzees from different families carrying something heavy together. Human beings are able to collaborate, and that is what has led to our progress out of the jungle. Whilst we are certainly a great deal like chimps in the way that we're selfish, we're also groupish like bees. And when we're able to combine forces, when we're able to collaborate with others, that means that our society progresses. We are 90% chimp, 10% bee. And that bee side of us, that groupish gene that works in a different direction from our selfish gene, when our groupish gene gets working, that's when we make progress. That's when we're able to move beyond what an individual is capable of doing to what many people are capable of doing. That's what builds societies. And as a result, over the millennia, we've come to recognize that if collaboration brings benefits, so the behavior that enables collaboration is good behavior. And our instincts, or our intuitions of what is moral behavior, are certainly emerged from what we began to understand as behavior that leads to collaboration. This comes from moral foundations theory. And so the idea is that our understandings, or our senses of morality, are now intuitions because they've emerged through evolutionary necessity. So what's the connection between our intuitions and our thinking? As in, how do our intuitions play out in our decisions? Like, do we have an intuition but then actually we think about it, or do we think about things and see whether they go with or without our intuitions? Well, the analogy, and again it's more animals from Jonathan Haidt, the analogy is of an elephant and its rider. The elephant is our intuitions, the rider is our intellect. And the power relationship is exactly the same. Our intuitions have the power. What happens with an elephant and its rider is that the elephant leans in a particular direction and the rider will go with it. Likewise, when we have moral dilemmas and moral questions, our moral intuitions come into play. We lean in a particular direction, and our intellect follows, explains, sometimes even excuses. But the main engine behind our moral decisions comes from our intuitions, and our intuitions have 6 senses, 6 palates. So just like we have palates on our tongue, where we notice if it's salty or sweet or savory, likewise we have 6 palates of morality. And these 6 palates, which live in our intuition, according to which we make our leanings toward decisions, are in 6. There are 6 of them, and as you'll see, the first 3 are easier to grab a hold of than the last 3. There's care and harm. We don't want people to be harmed physically. We don't want people to be hurt. We don't want cheating to happen. Tyranny is bad. And then also loyalty is important. And here Haidt is not talking about loyalty to yourself or loyalty to your principles or even loyalty to humankind. He's talking about loyalty to your in-group, your own particular group, loyalty so that you will make decisions, make sacrifices, even if it may well be against your own individual interest, You'll make those sacrifices for the good of your particular group. There's authority, the need for there to be some kind of a structure of command in order for things to move forward, and this idea of sanctity versus disgust. An example of sanctity where we wouldn't place it in the realm of spirituality or religion, but a sense as to how we know that this is a moral intuition. For example, there's a couple. They're driving home of a night, and they accidentally, tragically, run over their dog Lucky in the yard, and they kill the dog. Lucky is now dead. The couple, they pick up Lucky. Of course, no one's seen this happen. So they pick up Lucky, they take the dog inside, they skin the dog, they cook the dog, and they eat their dog, Lucky. If your stomach crunched up at that point, or you made a face, that's because you responded with disgust to something which seems in your mind to breach something sacred. We do have these understandings of sacred, but we can't explain them in the limited articulation of morality that we have up until now, because no one's been harmed, it's all fair, everyone's free, but something bad happened. If you ever saw the film The Great Escape, and if you haven't, really recommend it, James Garner displays loyalty towards Donald Pleasance. The guy on the right is now blind, but he helped everybody, and so the guy on the left, James Garner, helps him escape, even though escaping with a blind person is going to be a liability. He displays loyalty. And these are good things, good moral practices. Here, Breaking Bad, I think you can get the key understanding of why Breaking Bad is so engaging, so gripping and so disturbing, is because Breaking Bad comes out on the wrong side of all these 6 palettes. There's a great deal of harm, of cheating, of tyranny, treachery, subversion, and disgust. And that's probably why it was such a successful TV series. Now, what happens is that we live our lives according to this kind of moral graphic equalizer, whereby sometimes the importance of authority is less important than we want there to be care. Sometimes fairness is more important than loyalty. Sometimes liberty and freedom is more important than sanctity. We play around with these 6 intuitions, but all 6 of them affect the way in which we behave. The key is that they do not affect the way in which we articulate our moral understandings. And many people in the West, or people who would define themselves as liberal, find it much easier to define and articulate the first 3, the left-hand values, and not the right-hand ones. So we're capable of talking very articulately about care, fairness and liberty, but less so about loyalty, authority and sanctity. What we need to begin to understand is that they all play a role in our moral lives. But for example, there are issues. For example, you're at a funeral. A child is desperate to go to the toilet. The child's mother will not let that child urinate against the tree in the graveyard. Now, there's nothing wrong. No one's going to be hurt. It's quite fair. You're not being tyrannous or anything like that. It's probably even good for the tree. But it's something which offends, which breaches our understanding of sanctity, and that is part of our moral makeup. The difficulties happen when we get locked, when we forget the idea that we can move these levers up and down, that we can have a bit more of this one and a bit less of that one, that we're in a constant negotiation between these 6 palettes of morality. We forget that, and both sides tend to lock in one of the channels. There'll be those who will lock in the channel of liberty and say liberty is sacred, it cannot be compromised, nothing must get in the way of my freedom. And on the other hand, there are those who will lock in the channel of loyalty, and they will say that loyalty is sacred, and anybody who breaks this idea of loyalty, even in the name of any other of these palettes, is wrong and bad and even evil. Same goes for liberty. Anybody who wants to get in the way of my liberty, my freedom to do what I wish, my freedom of speech, etc., etc., is evil and must never be compromised with.